Welcome everybody to the Apple 2023 Virtual Education Series, and my name is Kim Grant, and I'm so happy to introduce today's webinar, which is Proven Strategies for Getting Past the Gatekeeper, of course, sponsored by Tiller-Hewitt Healthcare Strategies. Before we begin, though, I have a couple sort of housekeeping announcements, as always. All participants will be muted during the presentation. And if you're experiencing any dragging speech, check your internet connection. It could be due to that. Or if you're checking email or navigating the internet, if you're doing something else, pay attention.
Yeah, that.
Actually, just log off, because that may help prevent that issue. If you're having any difficulty during the webinar, use the chat box on your control panel to communicate with the organizer, and we'll see if we can help you. Make sure to adjust your volume on your speaker and or your headset on your end, so it's not too loud or too quiet. You can ask questions at any time by typing a question in the question box, which is located on the control panel. I know most of you know all this, but you can do that during the session, and the questions then will be sent, and we'll do the question and answer at the end of the webinar. And then at the conclusion, we'll have a short survey. Please don't forget to do that. We love your feedback, and that will help us improve our future webinar presentations. Also, we are recording this webinar, and it will be sent to you next week. So let's get started. Once again, thank you for joining us. I am so pleased to introduce our presenter today. Not only is she a longtime co-worker of mine, but great friend, Tammy Tiller-Hewitt. And maybe you don't know this, but let me tell you, Tammy is a #1 Amazon best-selling author of Untie Every Knot, little K, big N-O-T. Discover what knots are causing you to miss out, chicken out, or be counted out. She hosts the Leadership Lens podcast, interviewing senior healthcare leaders who bring powerful and transparent insight. She's a longtime friend of Apple, perhaps because she was once a liaison. She understands the issues and the challenges of being a liaison. Tammy leads Tiller-Hewitt Healthcare Strategies, of course, which is a firm specializing in strategic growth with physician liaisons, a lot of you out there, at the core. Tiller-Hewitt has launched and managed hundreds of liaison programs and trained thousands of superstar liaisons just like you. So let's get started.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. TGIF. So glad that you're here today, spending your lunchtime with us talking about one of our favorite subjects. In fact, it was my team who selected this topic for today because they think this is a big topic, and that was proven by over 100 people who have registered for today. So thank you, Kim, and thank you to AAPL. So I promise to bring you strategies that really do work. So today our learning objectives are around getting past the gatekeeper is discover why we overcomplicate the process. And we believe in the KISS method, which most people think of as keep it super simple. Ours is know your stuff. And that will make it so much less complicated. We're going to turn the fear factor into firepower. So we want to get fired up and make this a competitive thing just with ourselves on getting past the gatekeeper. And then third, we're going to talk about a secret formula that all of our liaisons have memorized, which is really the great separator. So for today's 1 hour webinar, I've taken parts from our 3-day or our 24-hour workshop, and it's called Make It Matter. In fact, here's an example of the things that are covered in those 3 days. So you can see over here that one thing is overcoming objections and getting past the gatekeeper. But we talk about so much more on day 1. It's really like a personal spa day professionally for you, as coming up with your personal brand standard, really discovering and playing to your strengths. So many people don't really understand what their strengths are. They're very vague. We really peel it back to make sure that you understand your strengths and you're operating under them. We talk about make communication better and the differences with personality types and generational differences and appreciation languages. And why that's so important is, well, we all know we're in the communication game, but so much of what this tells us is how people take in information and how they make a decision. And that's our job every day, so that we can communicate effectively so they're taking in our information and their decision is to choose us. Then we talk about making time matter. which is a real favorite of mine because we talk about goal setting and making sure that we have balance. So in time and territory management. Then we break into the stuff around professional consultative needs-based selling, where we talk about effective preparation and messaging to different audiences and the art of asking great questions to uncover needs and effective listening skills. We do fun and so fun exercises in that. We talk about overcoming objections and then follow through, and then we wrap it up making sure that we are all strategic, lean thinking, data-driven professionals in the field. So it's a really fun 3 days. So we have 3 left for 2023, as well as we have two-day workshops for leaders of liaison programs, which is really fun and collaborative as well. Now, this year, we started the Make It Matter alumni program. So anytime you've gone through any of the Make It Matter workshops, you can attend as many times as you want after that for 50%. And we do that, we're still doing them virtually for our corporate ones where anyone can come. We still believe that you can stay home, stay safe. You can also save money, but most importantly, you can stay relevant by doing this. And we're back on site with organizations who have larger teams. So if you have a larger team and you want a customized training program, we can provide that as well. So for 21 years, as Kim talked about, we've stood up liaison programs. So this has been our core business for, we just celebrated 21 years in September. And all of our liaisons come through Make It Matter at least twice. They're required to go through it twice because you never know where you're at that particular time and what your needs are on training. And the real reason is because of the startling statistics around retention. In fact, it's really called the forgetting curve. Did you know that statistically, get a hold of this, that research shows that within 1 hour of what we learn, we lose 50% of it. And within 1 day, we lose 70%. And 1 week, 90% is gone. So if we're going to stay on the top of our game, stay relevant, we always say we're either ripe and rotting or green and growing. So we want to be constantly growing and keeping a competitive edge. And that's why we're putting our money where our mouth is on that. So if we were to talk about what Tiller-Hewitt does, I always say I work with leaders who want to consistently deliver strategic growth and measurable results. But one way I believe in giving a pitch on what you do is to give them a visual. And this is something that we use that you too, all of you can use as liaisons. That what you do is your role is really at the intersection of strategy, sales, growth, and execution, with strategy and execution being the bookends. Strategy tells us what we're going to do, and execution is doing it. And so many organizations spend all this money on creating their strategic growth plan, but there's no one there to execute it. And I'm telling you, that's our job. That's your job to execute the plan. So at Tiller-Hewitt, we're a strategic growth company, period and end of story. And at the top half is what we do around strategic growth. When we first started the company, it was so much easier. A CEO would call us and say, hey, I need a sales program. I need to grow business. I need to improve my relations with my medical staff. So there were no real barriers in the way or that couldn't be resolved quickly. Well, it's a different game today. So before we launch any program, we always go on site and do a very robust strategic growth readiness assessment where there are a lot of stakeholders involved, the medical staff, the leadership team, management team, front office, and the practices telling us what are the barriers to growth in this organization. And oftentimes we find out about all the access issues that you all are painfully aware of, that this gets so many more stakeholders involved. And then we create a strategic growth plan. So the bottom half is the execution engine. So once we have a plan, remember I said strategic, then the bottom 3 are how we execute it. So if there happens to be a physician integration, or we need our medical group needs to ramp up our providers faster, or we have a retention issue, we go with our physician integration program that we used to call Onboard Plus, that people get so confused with onboarding, thinking it's integration or what's it called? New employee orientation. And that's not at all what it is. That's one piece of it, because some people have orientation for 1 day, maybe up to a week or 2. This is a year. It has a mentorship program. It has a family integration piece. So every base is covered so that we're helping providers integrate and their family into the community, ramp up and stay for a long, long time. Then our physician liaison program, which is our core business. Literally, we've stood up and managed hundreds of liaison programs. I was a liaison, Kim was a liaison. So, many people on our team have been in the field as liaisons, and now we manage liaison teams. So we're out in the field with liaisons every day. And then we have our own PRM called Tracker Plus. If you want a demo, you can hit that QR code there. But it was built by and for liaisons. So the last thing we want our liaisons doing is wasting a bunch of time in front of a computer. We want it to be easy breezy from the field for you to log your call, to be able to see referral data, and to start documenting issues so that they can be sent back to the base and you can start resolving them. So if you want a demo, you can shoot that QR code or go to our website. So let's do a quick level set before we jump into the content for today, because we really can't talk about gatekeepers unless we address this elephant and come to an agreement on this one thing, and that's sales. When we interview liaison candidates, which we do and have many, one of the first questions we ask is, what comes to mind when you hear the word sales? And if that's a dirty word to them, that's scary. Now, I can hopefully talk them out of it. But then I say, what if I told you that the job title that you're interviewing for is really code for sales? And then I see what their response is. Because we can't be reluctant and refuse really to identify ourselves as sales professionals and then talk about getting past the gatekeeper. It just doesn't go together. In fact, recently in our first Make It Matter 3-day workshop, I asked the class, how many of you identify yourself as sales? And none of them raised their hand. In fact, they're all like, more like this than like this. By the end, they all did. So I was able to change their mind. But just think quickly, what if you talk to a surgeon and the surgeon said, well, I take out gallbladders. You're like, so you're a surgeon? Well, or I fix bones. So are you an orthopedic guy? Like, no, they're this or they're that. We have to be really okay with what we do. And the first of it being sales. And if you're struggling to get past the gatekeeper, I respectfully say, or if you're having trouble hitting your weekly call goals or your monthly call goals, or you're not maxing out your performance bonus compensation plan, it may fall squarely on an identity crisis. So if you've not read anything by Daniel Pink, I highly encourage you to at least grab his book, To Sell is Human. Research shows that 40% of our time, 40%, so that's 24 minutes of every hour, is selling. And we can call it influencing or persuading, but we are all in sales. Think about it. If you have children, trying to convince them to eat their vegetables, to go to bed, and only one more story before I'm turning out this light, to take a bath for more than 30 seconds. How about our spouses or our partners trying to sell them on why we need this or that, or why we need to go here or renovate that, or our boss on a bonus or a day off? We are constantly selling, and we have to get away from the burden of thinking that's a negative thing. Zig Ziglar, who is the godfather of sales, internationally known, has written the most books on it. He's now in heaven, but he said, we're all in sales, but only the brave, successful ones admit it. Your game will change the minute you accept that you are a professional or you are a sales professional. We have to know that sales is still the people business. If something doesn't help them, they're not going to buy it anyway. So it's up to us to demonstrate the value. And maybe if we're going to look at it slightly different, that will help us. But it has to start with the gatekeeper. Because at the end of the day, a sale is always made right there at that front desk. And it's either you're selling them on yes, or they're selling you on no. But either way, there's a sale made. So maybe they're the salesperson and you're the buyer. So what are we afraid of? That's the question. I love the gatekeeper game. That's why I have to be reminded that this is a hot topic, because in my mind, this is the easiest thing to overcome. But so oftentimes we're just afraid. And I'm going to give you some real life tips today on how you can get over that, and how this gatekeeper thing is not even going to be a struggle for you anymore. But if you think about, you can't even lose by asking the gatekeeper to let you buy. Think about it. There are three options. You ask and you get by, you win. You ask and you don't get by and you're just the same that you are now. But if you don't ask, you lose. I was talking to my sister this morning. She goes, and I was talking to her about the webinar today. And she said, remember when Dad used to say 50-50 chance? You know, if you ask me, is a 50% chance I'll say yes or no, but if you don't, it's 100% chance of no. So we have to start getting really good at figuring out what are the questions and what's the value proposition that we're going to have for our gatekeepers. And maybe it's getting over this sales paradigm that we have that's this negative connotation, and maybe think of it more as I'm here to serve or I'm here to help. It's still a form of sales. Sorry if that still isn't resonating with you, but maybe you think of it that way, that sales to you is service. Sales to you is helping, being a servant person. And so it's going to take an attitude shift. And I love playing the number letter game. You know, if you think about it, there are 26 letters in the alphabet. So if you were to match up different letters to numbers, the word knowledge, you get 96% of the way. Hard work, you get to 98%. And both are important, but they fall short of 100%. But it's attitude that is everything that gets us to 100%. So we really have to change our attitude about this, make it a positive thing, make it competitive, and it will be a game changer for you. Years ago, I heard Rich Wilkins, who's the author of Building a Positive Attitude, speak at a conference. And so I grabbed his book. And there was this one line in his book that stuck with me for years. It was probably 30 years ago. I was a liaison when I heard him speak. But he said, if you can see John Brown through John Brown's eyes, you can sell John Brown what John Brown buys. So maybe we switch it to the gatekeeper. If you can see the gatekeeper through the gatekeeper's eyes, you can sell the gatekeeper or serve or help the gatekeeper what the gatekeeper buys. So we have to start getting into their head, into their space to figure out what is important to them. And this is a big reality that I think people forget, that the gatekeeper's job is to protect the provider. The gatekeeper's job is to block you, unless you can demonstrate that by them letting you through, that you are going to bring some value to them or to the practice in some way. And that has to be the name of the game for you. And we also have to remember how the staff switches around so much in practices. Today's gatekeepers are often tomorrow's decision makers. And if they're not a decision maker, they switch practices. So if you win Susie over in this practice and Susie moves to a practice that you haven't won over, wow, you're in. So we have to be thinking about playing the long game constantly. Now, many of you probably recognize this. Where's Waldo? If you've been in any pediatric practices, had a kid, or you're just into these word searchy kind of things, this book is for you. But I point this out because the sea of people is very similar to the vantage point or the view from a gatekeeper. All these people are coming in all the time, wanting their attention, asking them for favors or trying to prove their value. So we have to figure out how we can stand out. So even we can see where Waldo is here, but still he just blends in with everyone else. And he's a little odd because everybody else has swimming suits and half naked. He looks like he's dressed for the Swiss Alps. So how can we stand out from all the rest? Part of it is our value that we deliver, and to constantly be thinking what's in it for them to let me buy, not what's in it for you. Because honestly, we don't matter, because we're interrupting their day. We're interrupting their provider. We're potentially delaying them from going home, because if we delay the provider, then that could potentially back everything up. So I want to talk about earning a fast pass. Right pass through, and right pass by the gatekeeper. Easy for me to say. On our website, you can go to Tiller-Hewitt.com/resources, and you can download this one sheet that's 9 tips to make it 99% easier. And make it matter, we go through each of these individually, but I'm not going to today. I am going to go through 3 different objections from each gatekeeper category, but there are even more on this. I will tell you, and I just want to do this warning multiple times, these responses work, and you need to remember that getting past the gatekeeper is only step 1. The main event is after that. after you get behind the curtain. So you can't put all your work in the getting past the gatekeeper and then fizzle in the back, because that'll be the last time that you get back. So it's a double doozy job every single time we go to a practice, getting past the gatekeeper, and then what is our message, our value proposition to the provider or whoever our audience is. So for today, I'm going to do the fast 4 instead of all 9. So fast 4 number 1 is preparation. I could do an entire workshop just on preparation, because I think when we have this done, everything else falls into place. But this is where I get the eye rolls from seasoned liaisons, like, really, you're going to talk to me about the basic preparation? In fact, I did a Make It Matter for a very large multi-hospital health system who didn't want to talk about the basics. They didn't want to get around this. Well, I snuck it in on the last day instead of what we generally talk about on the first day. And all of the seasoned liaisons came back and said, the way you presented it made me think, wow, I really got away from the basics. And that's probably why my calls have gotten so boring. And it's like I lost the enthusiasm and the excitement that the calls used to be in the beginning when I was a new liaison, but now I know why. So I love to tell the story about John Wooden, who was the legendary coach for UCLA. And you can see here in the picture, he was, who else he coached was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at UCLA. And he went on to play for the Lakers and, had a fabulous career. But the left is training at UCLA. And then the right is when Kareem came back years later to recognize him for a big event. But I show you this to talk to you about basketball players who had been playing basketball longer than any of us have been liaisons. So many of these players, they're now in college, they've been playing ball since before kindergarten. So years and years and years. But do you know what Wooden did on the first day of practice every single year? The very first thing he did, he taught them how to put on their socks right. Grown men, teaching them how to put their socks on, because socks on wrong cause blisters. And blisters impact your game. And you know what the second thing he taught them was how to tie their shoelaces properly. Why is that? Because shoelaces improperly tied could result in a snapped ankle. And for a basketball player, that equals disability list. So if he got back to the basics with these people who have been doing this for years, don't you think that we should consider it as well and not lose sight of the importance of the basics? In fact, preparation, it's been said that 10 minutes of planning can save us 2 hours of wasted time. And some of that wasted time is us trying to convince the gatekeepers to let us by. So let's talk about how much time we should spend preparing. It should be what you do most out of your week. I know, isn't that crazy? But hopefully I'll convince you soon. So I don't know what your call volume is. Is it 20 calls per week? Is it 40 calls per week? For Tiller-Hewitt liaisons, it's 40 calls a week. That's why I always use that as an example. So when I ask liaisons, how much time a week do you spend preparing? These are the answers that I get. It's either none, I don't put that on there. There's none, or 30, 60, 90, or 120 minutes. Most people don't go over 2 hours. I've seen it very rarely. But look at that. If you're going to make 20 calls per week or prepare for 20 calls, if you only spend 30 minutes on Monday morning or Friday afternoons, I don't know when your prep time is, or please don't ever tell me you do it in the car before you go in. That's not going to give you at all the quality call that you need. But if it's just 30 minutes for 20 calls, you're only spending a minute and a half per call. How can you achieve the results that you deserve and that you should get because of your level by spending that kind of time? So this is where I want to encourage you. Preparation, when I talk about preparation, I'm not talking about just doodling some things to do on a note. I'm talking about sitting down and looking at a lot of different data points, which we'll talk about. Our 28th president, Woodrow Wilson, said this, and I couldn't say it better. He said, if I'm to speak for 10 minutes, I need a week to prepare. So for 10 minutes, he needs 40 hours. If you want me to talk for 15 minutes, I need 3 days or 24 hours. A half an hour to talk, I need 2 days. If I can talk for an hour, I'm ready now. So what does that say? We'll just like blah, 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 blah when we're not ready versus being brief, brilliant, and done when we are prepared. Okay, so let's talk about this. The formula that I talked about was P6. And this is a formula that all of our liaisons memorize. It's proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Now I put perfect in there because someone made a comment once like, well, they could be preparing wrong. And that is correct. I'm making the assumption that you're preparing perfectly with the right data. So I put perfect in there. So maybe it should be P7. And then your pre-call plan. Again, something we believe in so much that we give it to you complimentary on our website. This is where you set up, and this is for every call. All you seasoned liaisons and you brand spanking new ones. This happens for every single call. What is your objective? What's your finish line when you get there? How will you know if that call is successful? Like you can't just shoot from the hip. Oh, I was in the neighborhood, so I thought I'd stop by. No, that is not a professional physician liaison. That's not what we say. What data do you want to take or facts do you want to take? There's a spot for that. What's their referral look like? The last thing you want to do is, I wanted to come in and thank you for your business. What business? Do you even know for sure that they're giving you business? What's it look like? Are you getting all of their self-pay business and unfavorable payer mixes? Are they dumping on you while they're referring their margin business with a margin to your competition or to their best friend who has a surgery center and you're getting all of the unfavorable payer mix? Look, we're happy to take it all, but we don't want just the unfavorable. That favorable payer mix is what pays our bills. It's what offsets the losses that we take on the other. What do you want to ask? What do you not want to ask? What timely and relevant information can you share? What or whom do you want to take? I mean, get people in the car with you. It's hard to tell two people no at the counter. What's your potential follow-up plan? I mean, be prepared so that they're like, well, the next time you come, if you could bring this, you're like, oh, I just happen to have that in my briefcase or out in my trunk, I'll bring it. So all this stuff takes time to think through and collect. You know, during Make It Matter, when it talks about open-ended questions to ask, we have pages of open-ended questions that we read through to use, because then we pick 3 customers and we start working through them throughout the workshop. And then what are your potential obstacles, which we're going to talk about how you can get through this very easy that you may not have thought of. So I like to ask people after a meeting or a call when we think, darn it, I wish I would have asked them this. What's the probable diagnosis of that? Well, it's that we were not prepared. Now, we can't anticipate every question that we should have asked or that they might ask, but I promise you this, we'll know a huge percentage of them when we spend time doing our pre-call plan. And then what about after a meeting when we say or think, wow, that was easier than I thought? Well, the probable diagnosis there is that we were prepared. Just like a test. I mean, if your parents out there and you have a kid come home, you ask how their test went that day, and they say, it was pretty easy. Well, it's probably because they were studying a lot versus when they're like, it was so hard. Maybe I'll just speak for my daughter. It was so hard. I'm like, well, maybe you should have gotten out of the front of the TV. You know, so being prepared does just put us in such a great position for success. So number 2 of the fast 4 is engage the gatekeeper. We have a rule that's called business card first. So a lot of people want to stop giving out their business card after they've called on them a couple times. That is not what we should do until they shout our name. When we first come in, like, Tammy, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in a while, or Karen, it's so good to see you. That's when we stop giving away a card, or when we hand it and before they look at it, they're like, Tammy, really, you're handing me your card? Not after they look at it and have cheated. So take that guesswork out, because if you don't give them your card, the whole time you're talking, you're giving them your pitch, they're trying to figure out exactly who you are. Are you from this hospital, that hospital? Are you a pharma rep? Take the guesswork out. Like, stop that. Get rid of that disconnection that you're causing by being too prideful to give them your business card. In fact, as you walk through the practice anytime, every day, you pass out your cards like you're dealing poker, because you want everyone to know who you are and how they can use you. Find common ground. Don't be in such a rush that you mow over the gatekeeper. It may work once, but the next time they see you coming in, you will get shut down. So find some common ground with them. Ask smart questions. I love Jeffrey Gedimer's quote where he says, when we ask smart questions, we look smart. When we ask dumb questions, we look dumb. So we never want to look dumb because we're not dumb. So ask them questions, and don't ask them questions that you could have done through your research. Like, oh, what are your hours? I cringe when we go in and do a strategic growth readiness assessment. We'll ride with a team that's in place then. So I'll hear questions about, hey, what are your hours? When they were on the door, they're on their website that they could have researched. They're right there on the counter. What you want to say, are these still your hours? Are these patient hours or physician hours, or what hours are these? So you can clarify so you know best time to call on them, but don't ask questions that you could have discovered through your pre-call plan. And remember, the key to selling is not telling. Pharmaceutical calls that showing up and throwing up. That's not what we do. The key to selling is asking smart questions. And Kim on the line, who is a Tiller-Hewitt manager, that's her sweet spot, asking the right questions, asking a lot of questions to uncover needs. So other questions you can ask them is, of course, their name. How long have they been there? Something that always makes them feel good is, do I always get to see you when I come in here? Or are you always up front here? Or are you the boss around here? I mean, just engage them. Now, sometimes there's not a lot of time. There's patience, and we all know we have to get out of the way of patience and come back. So sometimes it gets to be a little crazy as we're stepping in and out of line, but that will prove our value to the gatekeeper. Number 3 of the fast four is listen. We need to listen with our eyes and our ears. And Covey, who is the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I recommend reading at least annually, he is actually the guy who said this. A lot of people are taking credit for this, but he said most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. If we've done our pre-call plan, everything is right there. We don't have to have it in our brain thinking, oh my gosh, if she talks for 1 more minute, I'm going to forget everything I came in here for. It's right there on your pre-call plan. So listen and take in, because honestly, sometimes what the gatekeeper says will completely throw off your plan anyway. So if you get back on script and start talking, she's going to think, they didn't listen to a word I just said. So listen with the intent to understand. And listening, I generally have this part under overcoming objection, but I think you'll find this funny if you don't already know. Oftentimes, the objection that we get is the same. It's just different lyrics to the same tune. So I don't know if you knew that these 3 kids' songs all have the same tune. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, twinkle, twinkle, little star, ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? So they're the same tune. So oftentimes, I'll have a liaison call a new liaison and say, well, today they're saying this. I'm like, well, that's no different than what they said before. It's just different lyrics to the same tune. You would still use the same response. So we wouldn't be able to do that if we weren't listening and hearing that, what they're saying is, and then putting our response to it. And one last thing about listening is you need to remember that when they start asking you questions, that's a buying signal. Stop selling. Like, zip it. I've seen so many people, we do exercises and make it matter to say, okay, when should that salesperson have stopped that? And we do it all the time because we're so hell-bent on getting our message out that we just like, oh, wow, I could have stopped this like 3 paragraphs away. So remember that. But if you're listening, you're hearing that they're asking you questions and just not conversing with you. All right. And then the 4th fast 4 is overcoming gatekeeper objections. Now, there is a process, and the number 1 process is we are sometimes playing the long game that we may not get in today, and that's okay. Unless it's life-threatening that we have to get in or we're going to lose our job, then we need to figure something out. But you need to know that, again, another principle or habit of Covey's 7 habits is begin with the end in mind. And the end in mind is that you're going to end up earning all their business, but maybe not today. So right now, it's about building a relationship. And then second, we've talked about listen fully to their objection, because if you don't understand it completely, how are you going to respond properly? You can't be, Polly want a cracker. Well, let's see, if they say this, I say this. You have to listen so then you can massage your response. And know this, what is more important than the objection is how you respond to it and how you handle it. They can be such a jerk, but we are never jerks. We always rise above. We always take the high road, as my mother used to say, and we will win because of that. All right. So overcoming objection. This will be, even though you didn't have to pay for this today, this could be worth $1 million or more than the admission price. So when it comes to overcoming objection, you need to understand what are your top 3 to 5 objections that you or your team hear. And if you spend an entire week just coming up with your responses to those top objections, your life will be so much better. Your access will be so much better because you stop just wasting time trying to come up with a new response to an old tune that you've heard a million times. So create this response grid. Work with your team, your managers, your directors, your leaders to help craft a solid response, because we don't know it all. We know a lot, but there could be an answer that a director or a manager would give to a potential objection that we never would have thought of. So take it to them and say, if you were with me and they said, I prefer the competition, what would you say? And so when our liaisons are in training, they go to all departments, and part of their department profile is filling out some of this. But since many of you have not gone through our training, which we call the boot camp, it's a 90-day boot camp on site, but you can find some of these answers from your colleagues back at your organization. And the cool part is there aren't that many. Because as you start writing them down, you will say, oh my gosh, this is number 2 and number 6, 7, and 8 are the identical objection. And so it's a super value use of your time. So create that. That needs to be something on your things to do list in the next 10 days or the next day. And then we're going to talk about 3 tips, the business card tip, note card tip, and be a B or a backup team in the next few slides. All right. So now we're going to talk about specific gatekeeper objections. And we're going to talk about the 3 main gatekeepers that we face: the receptionist or the front office, the office manager, or the nurse or medical assistant. So the objective is to get to the decision maker, and maybe the decision maker is the office manager, but maybe we have to go through the office manager to get to the provider. So you have to know who your decision maker is, who you're trying to get to. That's going to be part of your pre-call plan. In your messaging, then you're going to have to, your objective is to prove your value, and so that you'll never hear no again, because they would never dare say no to you, because every time you come, you bring something that makes their life easier. Okay. And this is just a warning. All of these are proven in the field and they work. So as I said earlier, getting past the gatekeeper is only step 1. You're not even on the main event stage yet. So you can't stop here. You're just getting the door open. All right. And then you have to be prepared. So the top 3 objections from receptionists are: we don't see reps, the provider is too busy with patients, or if you want to see the doctor or the provider, you need to schedule a lunch, and for the entire staff. Oh yeah. And they'll also order stuff for dinner too, for their family. But see that scheduling book over there. So those are the top 3. So here are the responses that we recommend, and again, are proven and work. We don't see reps. First of all, what does your badge say? Does your badge say you're a rep? I mean, some titles I've seen say hospital services rep or something representative. And also, what is it? What department does it say you're from? Because listen, I have a marketing degree. I love marketing, but oftentimes when they see marketing, they see sales. And while we are salespeople, we don't put sales on our badge, because we're consultative needs-based selling, and we can't put all of that. So they'll find out quickly that we're not a rep, but we need to say, I understand, I'm not a rep. But let me back up. The title that we have put on our liaison badge is administration. Even if they're not in the administration cost center, which the vast majority are, but even if they're not, it positions you that you're doing an administrative role in the organization. If you need help selling that to your HR department, feel free to give me a call. So some of the responses are: I understand, I'm not a rep, and you're talking to a gatekeeper. So if everybody's like, okay, that's kind of silly. No, it's really not. And it works. I'm your go-to at BJC Health. I'm your BFF at Reed Health. I'm the physician liaison, which is code for your personal concierge. So again, you're talking about what's in it for them. You can also say, I understand, I'm not a rep. Dr. Doe or Mr. Doe, our CEO, asked me to come over and meet with Dr. Smith or schedule a time to meet with him. Or I'm from administration and I want to talk to. So think about yourself. You have to revere yourself. And if your CEO, the CEO of your organization, was to walk into that practice, what would he or she say to the organization? They would say, hey, I'm Margie Smith. I'm the CEO at Children's. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes with Dr. Smith. Does he have a minute? They would go, whoa, 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 what now? So we have to figure out a way that we revere that kind of respect as well. And we can do that through demonstrating our value. Okay. Second one, the provider's too busy with patients to see you. Again, this tip works effectively 90% of the time. This is the business card tip that I talked about earlier. Hand the receptionist your business card and say, would you please give this to Dr. Smith and tell him that I'm here? I'll have a seat out here. And that works. But I will tell you, or maybe you need to say or tell them that the CEO sent me or the CMO sent you, which you better have been sent from the CEO or CMO, which is easy to do. You can go to the CEO and CMO and say, I need some messages to give out. Help me here. But my warning to you is when you get back and the doctor is holding your card and hey, Tammy, what's going on? Don't say, well, I was just in the neighborhood. I wanted to check in and see how things are going. That is the worst thing you can do. Don't even use this tip unless you have something of value to deliver when you get behind the curtain. And you can also say to the receptionist, I know you have a very tight schedule. I promise. Get that word. I promise, because we don't break promises, to be brief. We say B3, be brief, be brilliant, be done. So he or she can get back to seeing patients. When you make a promise, you keep a promise. In the back, if the doctor, then you get back and the doctor's like, come on back to my office, you can say, no. I told Sally up front that I would just keep you for a couple of minutes. Even if the doctor says, no, I have plenty of time, say, no, I'll come back. What time do you get done? I'll come back. We inconvenience ourselves, not our providers, and we don't break promises because we won't be able to use that the next time we're in the practice. The third one for receptionists, if you want to see the doctor, you must schedule a lunch for the entire staff. See the scheduling book over here. Listen. If scheduling a lunch is your objective and that's how you're going to rub elbows with everything and you have the budget, then you're in like Flynn, get it scheduled. But you need to set expectations, who you want there. Don't make sure you're looking at the dates that the biggest doctor or producer that you want to see is on vacation that week, that you're not coming to a day where it's just staff, unless you just want to see staff, so you've got to do your homework. But if you don't want to do a lunch, you just have something you need to talk to the provider about quickly. You can say, we don't usually do lunches because I have a very specific piece of information or quick question for the provider that doesn't require or call for an entire staff luncheon. All right. So just use that. Maybe they don't know. They don't want to know because they don't want to know our life story. They just want to get rid of you, kick the can over to the scheduling book. All right, now we're going to move to the office manager. The 3 top objections for office manager is any information you can leave with me and I'll go over with the doc. We're owned by XYZ, the competition, or we can't take time out of our schedule for your visits. Your visits. Make sure your ear perks up to that. Your visits is saying you wasted time the last time you were here. We're not visitors. Visitors implies that we don't respect their time, that we're just stopping by to interrupt. We don't visit. We make appointments some of the time, but I will tell you for Tiller-Hewitt, 90, maybe 95% of our calls are cold calling. That doesn't mean we're not prepared. It's just they don't know we're coming. We've uncovered best time to call. We know all that information, but we don't make appointments because for the vast majority of times they will tell us no if we ask to schedule an appointment. And then once you've been told no, what do? You can't show up then. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So if you have any information, you can leave it with me and I'll go over with the doctor. Rule of thumb, nobody sells your stuff but you. Let me repeat that. Nobody can deliver a message like your message. So you have to figure out a way that if you could deliver that message by handing someone a brochure or some pass through, that you're not prepared enough. Because that's the last thing you want to do with a doctor, right? Is go back and just hand him or her a brochure. So if you think you're dealing with, or if you are dealing with this assertive type manager who has to be in the middle of everything, have a packet for them, but still say, I still need to meet with the provider, the CEO or the CMO or whomever. And again, you need to make this happen behind the scenes. Wants me to meet with him specifically. I'm happy for you to join in that meeting. And then a second, if you could tell him or her, that I want to talk to them about this, then we could schedule a meeting and I'm happy to come back. So again, don't disrespect, but don't throw in the towel the minute, this assertive manager says, give it to me and I'll give it to them. No, that's not how we operate. All right. And it also does say that maybe you're not prepared enough. So play it out in your pre-call plan. What if the manager says this to me, give this to me? You need to have your talking points ready and rehearsed. And then once you do it once or twice, then it becomes second nature for you to say it to any assertive manager. Okay. We're owned by the competition. And this could be any gatekeeper that says this. And we know we hear it all the time. In fact, some liaisons don't even go to some practices when they're employed by the competition, which unless you've been kicked out, then there's no reason why you shouldn't go to the competition, because we want to be the B team or the backup player. So address the elephant in the room with whatever gatekeeper or whomever the gatekeeper is that you're talking to. Acknowledge proactively that you are aware that they are employed by or owned by ABC organization, and explain to them all the different scenarios on why you want to put a name with a face in the event that they would need you. And you should know all these things ahead of time. And that's in the second point. Be aware of those opportunities, whether it's location, a niche service or service line that you offer. Maybe you do pre-certs for all the imaging procedures, but the competition doesn't. So look for all these unique things that you offer, or just letting them know what you have in the event that their owner's equipment breaks down. And this could really work they work for the competition or they use the competition. Okay. And that really works. You wouldn't believe how many times we get the business as being the B team player. In fact, one of a leader who was in my Make It Matter class recently, she's over the physician liaisons and physician recruitment. And she told a story about how a locum tenens company kept bothering her. And they had a locum company that she liked and used, but this locum basically did the B team strategy that said, hey, I just want to keep a name with a face in the event that you ever need anything. Was super nice, not pushy or obnoxious, but just on a routine cadence. They ended up winning her over. So this works. We can't take time, or we won't take time out of our schedule for your visits. So sadly, this could be indicative that we kind of lost our privileges before, whether it's real or somebody has said that we came in and that's why they're so late that day. So depending on the reason, whether it's no value in the past or we stayed too long in the past, we need to try to understand that. But ultimately, if we think we stayed too long in the past, we can say, I have some information and I will only be a minute. I promise you I won't chit chat, and collaborate with them on the best time to meet with their providers. I mean, I can't tell you how many times through talking to the manager, we've gotten on the monthly provider agenda, and we just go and report out and we see all the providers at one time at their monthly meeting. So don't forget to mention that. Also, when you are working with a manager, really when you're working with anything, you need to be very careful about asking closed-ended questions. Like, can I make an appointment? And what if they say no? I said that earlier. Then what are you going to do? Show up the next time and they see you and like, didn't I tell you no? So you need to understand that, the cardinal sin for defense attorneys are you never ask a question that you don't know the answer to. So you need to be prepared. If they say yes, if they say no, or if they say maybe, what will your response be? So quickly, if they say no, we'll call you if we need you, you would say, oh, no. My job is to come here at least monthly to make sure that I'm providing you with new information about the organization that will make your life easier for your patients and for your staff. So make sure you're flipping that around quickly. Don't leave and think, oh my God, how will I get back in there now? Be prepared before you leave to say that. And the last set of objections are from the medical staff or the nursing staff in the back. The top three are they don't have time to see you, they don't need anything, and they don't use your facility, or we don't use your facility. So the provider doesn't have time to see you. No way are you going to see the doctor today. And I've heard it said a million times, there is no way today, no way today. Well, everyone loves to kick the can. All right, so we have to be ready to offer up other alternatives. So be prepared to hear this at every step of the way. The receptionist could say, no way are you going to see anyone today. But some of the responses, after you've demonstrated the value that you're going to deliver to them, the nursing staff, and the provider, you can ask, I just want to share one thing with Dr. Smith. It's about this, and here's the value. What's in it for them? And so if they say no way, you can say, can I come back? And then ask them when. Can I come back tomorrow? Again, if somebody's so busy, they just want you to go away. So don't leave without getting a commitment. Well, tomorrow will be better. Can I come back this afternoon? So really get them to commit, because then when you come back the next day, when they're just as busy, they'll let you in because they're actually the ones that told you to come back then. And always have note cards with you. This has worked countless times, that you set and write a note to the provider and say, hey, Dr. Smith, I was here today to see you. I have some really important information to share with you about blah, blah, blah. I'll be back. Sally said I could come back tomorrow. Or if Sally says, I don't know when you can come back, call me. Then say, Sally said there's not a good time right now, but please call me on my cell phone. We've been called before we're even out of the parking garage. So no cards on you, always handwritten. Nobody gives handwritten notes out anymore. They're a novelty. Doctors rip them open quickly. Second, the provider doesn't need anything. And yes, they are mind readers too. So you can say something like, well, I might be able to change that. I have blah, blah, blah that's pertinent to him or her and you. So we always have to remember to focus on what's in it for them. We're going to save them time. We're going to save them resources. We're going to make it easier for them or their patients. You're going to take some burden off of them. And you can always fall back on finding someone to send you with some information. So you can say, well, I've been sent by fill in the blank, Dr. Smith, who maybe is a referral source or a colleague that really has a lot of credibility, that if you use that name, she's going to be getting the doctor to talk to you. So remember, when you take the provider time, we're potentially delaying the staff. So every 5 minutes that you're spending with the doctor, that could be 5 minutes later that they get off that day and are late picking their kids up from daycare or getting to a kid's game or whatever. It's none of our business. It's just if they want to get off at 5, we don't want to be the reason that they don't get off till 5:15. And then last, the provider doesn't use your facility. So this is something that you can use a lot of the information that I've talked about already, and you should know this, that they don't use the facility. And so what you're trying to figure out is the why behind it. And this is where you're also going to play the B team. Well, I know you don't use this much because you've looked at the data, right? So you know that. So you're going to try to understand why they don't, and then look for ways through the other one where we are owned by the competition that you can use. Well, hey, listen, I just want to make sure you have our order forms. So in the event you can't get in for an MRI same day at blah, 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 oftentimes we can get you in faster, or call me. So again, you can say that's exactly why I'm here, because I know you don't use this, but I bet you're going to use this after I tell you this. So engage them in conversation about what's in it for them. And then, as I've said probably 20 times already, keep your commitment to the gatekeeper. It will pay off dividends for the future. And then last, use your resources. Go to Tiller-Hewitt anytime. We have tons of complimentary resources that can help you in the field. One is our monthly calendar that you'll get almost a month in advance, so you can start playing themes or using themes. Well, we know that March is a big month for liaisons because it's National Doctors Day. So get on it, because we're at the beginning of the month. But yesterday was Hospitalist Day, and we have sleep awareness coming up and pulmonary rehab. So there's tons of stuff that you can theme out a call, like Cinco de Mayo, we take chips and salsa. So it's okay to be playful sometimes. Everybody has to eat. And I also say, if you're taking food, don't be stingy. Don't take one cookie per person. Who eats one cookie? Maybe you do, but I never. If I eat one, I eat 3 or 4. So take enough so that the whole staff can have more than one. If you're going to take a cake around a theme, take it on a Tuesday. Monday, everybody's on a diet, but Tuesday, you want to have them have time. They're going to be nibbling on that cake all week. You take a cake on Friday, it'll be stale by Monday and you've wasted your money. So here are a couple. There's March, there's April that you can download. Again, we generally have the monthly recognition at the top. Then you can see the blue line that will talk about weekly observations, and then every day has something you can be celebrating. So this was a theme around Halloween and Cinco de Mayo. This was one liaison took around Halloween candy, and there's a rhyme there about their imaging services. So again, have fun. Think pink in October. We paint pumpkins pink and take them out in the beginning of the month. We brand them with our logos and take them out so that there's that correlation between they're like, oh, they're part of that organization. Now you can see up here we had pink. We took our order forms and made them pink. Never do that. Make them burgundy, but not pink, because if you're using a fax at all, that pink just wiped out over the fax. So Pinterest is your friend as you're coming up with ideas for different fun events. And then don't forget, we have lots of stuff that we talk about over 3 days for our training. And then this whole deck is in I'm going to take this down. This whole deck is in your chat. So you've got it and accessible for you anytime. So with that, Kim, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. Wow, you got a lot in the time. We have 4 minutes left before I open it up to questions, which we do have a couple, and then you can put them in the chat as well, or Q&A, I should say. I just wanted to remind you that we will actually be in Denver, Colorado, June 20th through the 22nd at the Apple conference. So come say hi to us out there. We love that the most. So definitely check us out.
Yeah, Kim and I are both talking as well. Yeah. So it'll be fun.
Yeah. So if you want to raise your hand and go off mute, you can do that. We still have all of our participants online here.
So they can't go off mute, Kim. I think they have to put it in the Q&A.
Okay. I do have one question. Someone said that they mentioned about your assessments. They would love to have you come on site and do an assessment because they think that senior leadership doesn't recognize their value. Can you talk to that? Has that helped them when you do something like that?
Oh, that is a great question. And already I love the liaison because they understand the value of it. So yes, our ultimate goal is to make sure that the liaison team is positioned within the organization as high as possible. Part of administration is our ultimate goal. But yes, when we stand up a program and do this, we're working very closely with the liaisons to understand what kind of barriers they're facing in the field. And then we're validating that with the medical staff and key stakeholders within the organization and looking at data. So we did an assessment recently where before we came on site, we looked at external data and discovered that $100 million a year was leaking out of their own employed practice to their competition for services they offer. And we found out, and the liaisons were like, yeah, duh, because we're so hard to do business with. So we started interviewing providers to find out what is so much easier at the competition to get over. Well, it's a path of least resistance. They call the orthopedic and the orthopedic says, send them over. Not, well, send me my chart. Let me decide if I want to see them or not. So they make it very easy. So we're able to validate that and then find out we prioritize our strategic growth plan to say, okay, today, these 3 service lines are ready for the liaisons to really go out and market. These 3 need some work done operationally, and these 3 need to recruit providers before we can do anything. So we help prioritize and then get buy-in from the medical staff and leadership.
Another question real quick, and obviously people can stay on as much as they can. Onboarding, people are saying that they're not involved in that process at all. They never really know who the new providers are. You mentioned that again early on, I think maybe is why we're getting that question.
Yeah. Another thing, I mean, we think liaisons are at the core of anything physician related. So they're very much involved in the physician integration piece because the recruiters want to hand it off to someone quickly so they can recruit more. So it's us that we want them to hand it off. So liaisons work really closely with practice management, not to get in practice management knickers. We don't want to do that. We want to help get the provider busy and also stay in touch with the family piece of it. So if you're not involved, you need to raise your hand and say, I want to get involved earlier. You need to be part of the interview process. Even if it's entertaining the spouse in the beginning, because you can win over a decision maker. Kim, you've helped stand up many integration programs. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I would say get involved. Onboarding process is not owned by anyone. Usually but think about it, everyone touches it. Like everyone touches it. So yeah, definitely just volunteer. And I think by doing that, you'll raise your awareness with leadership as a start, that you're even willing to help and support that process.
Yeah. That's funny that you say that, raise your hand. I interviewed a CEO on our podcast not too long ago. And my favorite question in the last few months is, what do you look for when you're looking to advance someone within the organization? And this guy said, I look for people who have raised their hand, who want to be a part of the solution. And that's how they get seen. And that's how we see what they're worth in terms of their work ethic and what they can deliver. So definitely raise your hand. But you guys need to remember, and we tell our liaisons this, you can raise your hand for whatever you want, but you still have to hit your call volume. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're getting measured on.
Yeah.
Not all your extracurricular activities.
Forgot about that part. Hang on, one more is coming in right now.
Yeah, Barb, 95%. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, 95% are cold calls. So we're super prepared. They just don't know we're coming at that particular time. Now, one caveat, that's unless you have a doctor with you. Then we let them know we're coming. We try not to schedule time except if it's a lunch or a dinner. Other than that, we work with the practice to say we're going to come in the morning or we're going to come sometime in the afternoon, because you get behind. So only when we have a physician in the car or a provider in the car with us do we schedule something.
No. Well, we are over time, so I will wait one more minute if anybody wants to type a question in. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to either Tammy or B if you have any other questions, and definitely come see us in Colorado.
All right. Thanks, everyone.